Okay, good evening, everyone. I think we're ready. I think we're live, and we're going to get started. Tonight's topic is why Jews are compared to the moon. So, thank you, everyone, for joining, and feel free to make comments, questions, either in person, live, or chat box or on Facebook. Try to pay attention to all of that, and hopefully it's going to be a good discussion. So thank you for joining us. So the story takes us back to the time just before the Exodus, the Jewish Exodus from Egypt. The Jewish people were about to go free. But first, God gave the Jewish people one mitzvah, one commandment. What was this commandment? This was the very first commandment that the Jewish people received. What was it? So just before the Exodus, it was after so many years of a bitter slavery, the Jewish people were really excited to get out of Egypt. And it was going to start a new era of freedom, of a birth of a new nation. A lot of things were going to change. So what was this mitzvah that had to come before all of this? First mitzvah, believe it or not, was the mitzvah of setting up the Jewish calendar. So the Jewish calendar is a lunar calendar. It does get lined up with the sun as well every 2 to 3 years. So that way Jewish holidays are always going to be in the correct season. So that's important in Judaism and the Jewish calendar. But in fact, the Jewish calendar is a lunar calendar. It goes according to the moon. And that is how we count the days, the months. And that was the first mitzvah. I'm going to share the screen so we could see a little bit of the text. I think it's interesting. And then we'll talk a little bit more about it. So here we go. Hopefully everybody could see what it says. The Lord spoke to Moses. This is in our Torah portion in the book of Exodus. The Lord spoke to Moses and to Aaron in the land of Egypt, saying, "This month shall be to you the head of the months. To you it shall be the first of the months of the year." So that's the verse. It's not 100% clear what it's saying. Like so many verses in the Torah, we need to see the commentary. So the first commentary that we look at is Rashi. It was the most basic commentary, very important commentary. And Rashi says like this: this month, that's quoting the words "this month," in Hebrew it's HaChodesh Hazeh, literally means this renewal. So what's the commentary of Rashi? What does Rashi say? God showed him, Moses, the moon in its renewal and said to him, "When the moon renews itself, you will have a new month." And the source for this is Mechilta, which is the Medrash. Okay, so this is the text from the Torah. This is the source for this mitzvah to establish the Jewish calendar, the very first mitzvah that the Jewish people received in Egypt, actually, as a people, as a nation. Now the question is, what is so important about this mitzvah that it was chosen to be the first mitzvah, the first commandment given to the Jewish people? And not only that, at such a critical time, just a very short time before the Jewish people left Egypt. So what is the importance of this mitzvah? What is this commandment all about? What does it represent? And why is it given so much attention at such a critical time? So let's look at one more point to go into this a little bit deeper. That's the second text that we just had a moment ago. Put it up here again. You can see it at the bottom of the page, and it says like this: "The people of Israel are similar to the moon, and therefore count their calendar months according to the moon." And this comes from the Talmud. And so if you think about it, the Jewish people being compared to the moon sounds like an unusual thing, sounds like a bit of a strange idea, because wouldn't it be more powerful? Wouldn't it be more interesting to compare the Jewish people to the sun? The sun has more power, more strength, more light, more brightness. So why wouldn't we try to compare ourselves to the sun? Instead, we're looking at the moon, which pales in comparison to the sun. Ask other nations, what are qualities with which you identify yourselves? They'll talk about bravery, they'll talk about strength, freedom, power. So Jewish people, if we're trying to identify with something, some part of nature, some type of symbol, why do we choose the moon? Why does the Talmud say that the Jewish people are compared to the moon? Why is this something that we identify ourselves with? Why is this something that connects us as a people, that represents and symbolizes us as a people, the Jewish nation, the moon? What is this all about? What's the significance? So on a very simple level, just like the moon waxes and wanes, the same is with the condition of the Jewish people. So at the beginning of the month, the moon is just a sliver. It's very small. Slowly, it becomes brighter and brighter until on the 15th day of the month, we have a full moon. And then again, it becomes smaller and smaller until the end of the month. And in a way, this represents the story of the Jewish people and the story of our nation, because the Jewish people, we've had some highs and we've had some lows, or perhaps many of each. And we've had brighter times, we've had dimmer times, we've been persecuted, we've had successful times. And so there's a lot of ups and downs in the Jewish story. There's a lot of ups and downs in Jewish history. And that's the story of our people. We become brighter at times, we become more successful at times, and at times, unfortunately, we've seen some pretty terrible persecution and things like that. Eventually, we will reach and arrive at our ultimate brightness of the full moon, never to diminish. But actually, the story of the Jewish people throughout our history, it's been similar to the moon. The moon waxes and wanes, becomes brighter and dimmer, again and again every month. And the same is with the Jewish people. So that's on a very simple level the reason why Jewish people are compared to the moon. But of course, as it is with everything in the Torah, there's always more. There's always a deeper level. There's always a deeper significance, and there's always a deeper story. And on a deeper level, the reason we're compared to the moon is because the moon has no light of its own. Okay, so the moon is not a source of light. It is only a reflection of the sun, as we all know. So just depending on the position of the moon, that's how we sometimes have more light. Sometimes we have less light. If the moon is not able to receive more light from the sun because of its position, that's why you see just a sliver, just a small amount, and slowly it becomes more and more. So the idea of the moon is that the moon does not have any of its own light. All of the light that it has comes from the sun. It's a reflection of the sun. And the same is true in the world. The same is true with the Jewish people, and the same is true with God, because God is the source of all energy and sustenance. And our job and our duty in the world is to be the reflection of God, and to reflect God's light in the world that we live in. So it could be a dark time, it could be a dark world, and our job is to do exactly what the moon does, The moon doesn't have any of its own light. It just looks to the sun, sees the sun's light, and reflects its light and creates more light through that. And so the Jewish people are compared to the moon because it is our duty, it's our responsibility, it's our job to receive God's light and act as a reflection, share it with others, and share it with the world. Now, the fundamental difference between the sun and the moon is that the sun is made up of another material, if you will. The sun is made up of gases and things like that, and the sun is actually the nature of the sun is conducive to giving light and energy. That's how the sun is created. That's the nature of the sun. Those are the characteristics of the sun. The sun is designed to make light. The sun is designed to give that energy and to make that brightness and that warmth and that light. The moon is completely different. The moon is fundamentally different because the moon is just a rock. It's just solid matter, and therefore, when the moon creates light, in a way, that's a much more remarkable thing, because the sun, okay, you would expect the sun to make light. That's its job. That's how it was created. That's how it's made up. That's the characteristics of the sun. That's the makeup. That's the nature of the sun. So it makes sense. But when you see the moon, which is just a rock, and it's just solid matter, when you see the moon glowing and creating light, that's a much more remarkable thing. So this is exactly why the Jewish calendar and the mitzvah of establishing a Jewish calendar, which is based on the moon, this is why it became the first mitzvah. Jewish calendar is the first mitzvah. And this is also why it was given at this time, at the outset of the Jewish people becoming a new nation. So basically, with this mitzvah, God was conveying the essence of the Jewish mission and the Jewish responsibility in the world. So the world is a physical place. The world is made up of matter. It could be a spiritually dark place. And it certainly does not appear to be some type of gas or fuel for God's light. Just like the moon, right? So the sun seems to be made up of the right stuff to make light, but the moon does not seem to be that kind of that kind of a creation that it could make light. And the same thing is with the world. The world is a spiritually dark place. The world is physical. It's made up of matter, and it does not seem conducive, and it does not seem made up of the right stuff to light up and to reflect God's light. And the same thing is with us as people, our bodies, with our egos and desires. It certainly doesn't feel like we're made up of the right stuff, that we should be reflectors of God's light. But this is, in fact, the first mitzvah. The first mitzvah is the mitzvah of establishing the Jewish calendar, which is based on the moon. This is to teach us that just like the moon, even though it doesn't seem like it's made up of the right stuff, nevertheless, it could and does act as the reflector of the light of the sun. And it glows. Not only does it glow itself, but it gives light to others. And this is why we have this mitzvah first, and this is why it was given at this time, when the Jewish people were just becoming a nation, because this is the message of God to the Jewish people, saying that this is your responsibility in the world. This is your mission in the world, to, first of all, be reflectors of God's light. So you should find it within yourself to be able to allow yourself to glow with something holy, with something spiritual, something godly. But not only that, also to allow that light to shine to others and turn the world into a spiritually brighter place, into a more godly place, into a better place, into a kinder place. And this is a very powerful message. The fact that we have this mitzvah, it's basically saying that we do have the ability, we have this extraordinary ability to first of all cause ourselves to glow and to be reflectors, but more than that, also to make light and to light up the world, which seems like it might not be conducive for godly light and for holiness, for spirituality and things like that. But it is in fact possible, and that's our job. Now, one final point before I take some of your comments and questions. This task could seem very daunting, and this task could seem, way above us and way beyond us. Who could say that they are, reflectors of God? Who could say that they have the ability? Who could have the confidence and inspiration to be able to say, okay, I'm going to brighten up myself. I'm going to allow myself to glow, and more than that, I'm going to brighten up the world around me. Who could say that? It sounds like something really difficult. It sounds like something way beyond our capabilities. But here again, the answer to this question, the answer to this dilemma, is again contained in the moon and how the moon operates. So at the beginning of the month, when we declare the new month, and this was actually a holiday in the times of the Bet HaMikdash, in the times of the Holy Temple, the day of Rosh Chodesh, the day of the new Jewish month, was considered to be a mini holiday where they would bring special sacrifices, and there'd be certain celebration of the day. So when did this sanctification happen? When did this special celebration take place? It took place when the moon was its tiniest. It took place when the moon was just a tiny sliver of light. And that teaches us something very important. It teaches us that the commandment to sanctify the moon, right? That's the actual mitzvah, to say that this day is the day of Rosh Chodesh, it's the day of the new Jewish month. This also teaches us something about the mission and responsibility that we talked about before. So it's not necessarily important to make a big grand change. It's not necessarily, we don't need to focus on changing the whole world and making the world a brighter place. All we need to do is start with the first step. All we need to do is start with creating just a sliver of light, just doing a small mitzvah, something small to allow ourselves to glow and the place around us to glow. This is really what the moon teaches us. The moon teaches us that everyone has the ability, and there's no need to be overwhelmed by this responsibility. And we should have the confidence and the inspiration to carry out this task and this duty, because it is within our reach. All we need to do is focus on the sliver, focus on something small, adding a little bit of light, and a little bit of light makes a very big difference. Ultimately, the moon gets bigger and bigger until it reaches full brightness in the middle of the month. But that's not how it starts. It starts just a little bit at a time. And that's how we make an impact. That's how we share God's light. That's how we reflect. We act as reflectors of God's light to glow ourselves, but also make the place around us glow with the brightness and the light of God, holiness, goodness, and kindness. So this is why the Jewish people are compared to the moon. First of all, because the moon waxes and wanes, and this is really the story of the Jewish people. This really captures the Jewish story. But on a deeper level, we're supposed to be what the moon does for the sun. The moon reflects the light of the sun. We're supposed to be the moon. We're supposed to be the reflectors of God's light. And first of all, glowing up ourselves, but also allowing the place around us to glow, allowing the place around us to enjoy and receive this certain holiness and goodness that comes hopefully through the actions and the mitzvahs that we take. So this is the first idea I wanted to share today, tonight. I'd like to hear some of your feedback. If you'd like to share any comments or questions or anything, I'm going to look at the comments as well. And after that, we'll continue with one more idea. So please go ahead.
Well, I heard today, that a mile is a trial, okay. A yard is hard, but an inch is a cinch. So if we just go little by little, we'll finally get to a yard and then a mile, step by step.
Very well said.
Starting off from the sliver. But the other thing is that I think God wanted his children to become, like you're saying, a reflection of his light, which is why he made us in his image. So it's just, it's right there too. It's said right there from the very beginning.
Very well said. I think that's exactly true. We are created in God's image, and in a way, we are the way we're built, and the way we're structured is this is talked a lot about in the Kabbalah. We're actually a mirror of God's character, so to speak. Of course, it's in a completely different way. God is infinite and unlimited, but we do have similar structure, if you will. And this is a very important idea in the Kabbalah. And I think that's very important point that we have it in us. We have the ability to be the reflectors of God.
Yes.
Rabbi Avi, can I say something very quickly? Is that all right? Can you hear me okay?
Mm-hmm. Very well.
Thank you so much for the amazing talk. It was really, really wonderful. I just want to kind of riff on that a bit. Not so much to add, but just to offer this up to the other participants, because Rabbi Avi and I had a conversation recently about an academic paper I'd read. I think it was in Nature magazine, about Nature journal, about how the structure of the universe has astrophysicists studying it found that it had many structures to the similarities with the structure of the brain, like the ways in which the shapes and the contours and all of the different components, the overall structure of it had all these similarities, and how in nature we have all these beautiful, where like the micro and the macro like mirror one another, like you find these patterns again and again, like Fibonacci sequence and this kind of thing. Because I was saying about how as I've become more religious, a lot of people, I work in a very secular world. Lots of people have said to me, like, how can you like science if you are also becoming religious? And I don't see any contradiction at all, because it's about this sort of marvel of the universe. But this idea that like we're made in God's image, or that you see kind of God's fingerprint in everything, kind of feels very true. And I thought it was really lovely that we're talking about the moon, because when you think about beyond the earth, that all of this is God's creation as well. Sorry, I know I seem like I'm hopping around a lot between different points, but that it's that feeling of connectivity, and that should also kind of encourage us in our sense that we are made in God's image, and so to honor that, to live our lives in a way that honors that, is very kind of like beautiful and kind of like what we're made for. And so I found it really lovely, the way that this brought all of those threads together. I hope that made sense.
That's an excellent point. I think that's a very important point, a very powerful point. And the Kabbalah talks about this a lot. It's not just God, and it's not just human beings that are created in God's image, but actually the world is created in the same structure. And so this is another very important idea, that the world actually contains, and it's embedded within the creation, within the world itself. There's already this ability. So it might not seem like the world is fuel for God's light, but actually at the core of the creation, the world already has it. So really, what's really happening is not so much that we're bringing new light to the world. What we're really doing is revealing the light that's contained within it. So that's a fantastic point that the Kabbalah talks a lot about. Yeah, definitely.
Also, the earth has plants, and we have hair growing on us. The earth has a surface, and we have skin. The earth has veins, where waterways, or it could be lava flowing through. We have veins in arteries. We have the earth has a mantle, and we have bone. The earth has magma within it, the mantle, and then we have marrow within our bones. And what I understand is that in order for us to be able there's a basis for a relationship, in other words, which brings joy. When we could live in harmony with the creation or with one another, there's other common bases we can make. Whatever we can make a common base with, then we can form a relationship with, and this could bring joy.
Right.
Yes, yeah, that's great.
Very well said. I just want to know, so there are definitely a lot of comparisons between the human body and the earth. I just want to know where the hot springs are and the volcanoes, where we find that.
That's a deep question. Peter has an answer.
I think that only happens when we get sick.
Okay. I thought you were going to say when you get angry, you have the smoke coming out of your ears.
Or maybe mentally, yeah.
Okay. Very good. So I'd like to continue with one more point, which is also the continuation of the story in the Torah portion. After this, we finally have the actual Exodus and the Jewish people's departure from the land of Egypt. So first, Pharaoh repeatedly refused to let the Jewish people go. But after a long story, about a year long of 10 plagues, so the 10 plagues continued over about 10 months. And so finally, after all of these 10 plagues, difficult plagues, not only did Pharaoh let the Jewish people go, but he told them to hurry up and to get out of Egypt. And so this was how the Jewish people became a free people. So I'd like to talk about freedom for just a couple of moments. What is freedom? What is the definition of freedom? How could we define it? How could we explain it? What is the core of freedom? What's the idea of freedom? And so I think it's commonly understood and explained and translated as basically removing any restrictions that a person might have, and any restrictions to a person's self-expression, and any restrictions to a person's self-determination, right? So I think this is usually how we understand freedom. So basically, when a person is no longer restricted. Okay, anybody disagree with that? Okay. So my question to you is that really freedom? Because restrictions could be removed from you, and you could have the freedom and to express yourself and self-determination, all of that stuff. But what about the forces that control you from within, right? So perhaps theoretically you could be restricted or enslaved by certain desires that you have, certain bad habits that you might have, or certain addictions that you might have, especially if some of these desires or wants or needs are perhaps not even your own, but placed into your head by others, by things that you see, things that you hear, the people you're around. So, and especially if these things are bad for you. So what is freedom? Is if freedom is only the removal of external restrictions, is that true freedom? Are you actually completely free? What about the forces from within, which might be restricting you from within? Perhaps this is not in your best interest. Perhaps this is not good for you. Perhaps it's not even your idea. So what is freedom? And let's try to get the Jewish perspective on freedom, since the story of the Torah portion is all about the Exodus and the Jewish people becoming a free people. And so the answer is the Jewish take on freedom is to define freedom is the ability to express who you truly are. So to be able to express the core of who you are and your truest self. So if there are parts of you, parts of your personality, parts of your character that have not yet been explored, then you're not truly free, because certain parts of you did not have the opportunity to express itself. And so again, the Jewish idea of freedom is that you could fully express who you are at your very core and at your very essence. And the same is true about your soul. If your soul did not have the opportunity to express itself, then again, you're not truly free, because the soul is a big part of you, of course. So just like if there's a part of your personality, your character that didn't have the opportunity to express yourself, so you're not fully expressing yourself, and therefore you're not fully free. The same thing is with the soul. If the soul does not have the ability or the opportunity to express itself, then you're not truly free, because you're not allowing all of yourself to be expressed. And so freedom is to be able to be your truest self without any restriction. So before we talked about the removal of all restrictions, this is taking it a step further, because we're saying that there should be no restrictions on your inner self and your inner core. So we're not talking about restrictions, external restrictions. We're talking about the Jewish idea of freedom is that there's nothing restricting you from expressing who you truly are at the core. So what is your essence? What is your truest self, and who are you at the core? So for a Jewish person, a very big part of this is the neshama, the soul, the part of God within us, and this part of ourselves being connected with Him, being connected with God. So when is a Jewish person free? Jewish person is free when he or she is expressing themselves fully and completely. And this includes being in sync, so to speak, with God, having a certain connection to God, having a certain bond with God. And so this is why the famous words, "Let my people go," is actually not the full statement. It's not the full context. Well, forget the full context. It's not even the full sentence. It's not the full statement. This is the part that gets most of the attention. The words "let my people go" is the part. These are the words that are most popular and the most famous, but that's actually not the complete sentence. The complete statement is, "Let my people go, that they may serve me." Okay? Now, if you think about it, "Let my people go, that they may serve me," sounds like the most unusual thing for someone to say when they're trying to secure the freedom and the release of a people, right? What's the difference if they're slaves or servants to Pharaoh to being servants to God, serving God? Right? You want to let they came to the Jewish people and he said, we're gonna get you free. But "let my people go, that they may serve me." What kind of freedom is that? Freedom just to serve someone else? What type of freedom is that? And the answer is what we just explained, that this is about the free expression of the soul. It's about the desire of the soul. So until the soul has a tremendous yearning and desire for God, and until the soul's thirst is quenched, a person cannot fully be content. A person cannot feel complete with themselves, and a person cannot be truly free. And so now this statement, "Let my people go, that they may serve me," makes a lot of sense, because the Jewish idea of freedom is that we should be able to express our truest selves, who we are at the core. And that includes, in a big way, our souls. And for our soul to express itself, that means celebrating something spiritual, celebrating the connection to God, the bond, that unity, and taking part, participating in the purpose of the world and its personal mission in the world. So until a person gets involved with their soul, there's a major part of themselves that is not being fully expressed, and therefore they're not truly free. And to be truly content and to be truly complete with yourself and truly happy with yourself, truly satisfied, we need to allow the free expression of every part of ourselves, of every part of our truest selves, all of our character, all of our personality, certainly the soul. Now, the Torah is kind of like the blueprint, or like a life manual for our lives, and certainly our souls. And so sometimes people say, what are all these laws and rules about in the Torah? These restrict us. Again, it takes us back to the question we asked before. How could you say, "Let my people go, that they may serve me"? What type of freedom is that if they're serving God? What type of freedom is it if they're receiving the Torah? The Torah has so many laws and rules. What type of freedom is this? What is Moses and what is God giving to the Jewish people? Another servitude? Why is this better than what they had earlier with Pharaoh? And the answer is that the Torah and the mitzvahs of the Torah, the commandments, the laws, and the rules, not only do they not restrict us, but it allows us to tap into our deepest selves and our truest selves. And so, like we said before, that I may serve you, that they may serve me, it means that a big part of us is being allowed the opportunity to express itself. And what might look like a restriction, a law and a commandment, a mitzvah that might seem like a restriction, is actually the what enables us in many cases to develop ourselves and to express ourselves. So let's take a simple example of the football game or soccer. If you come from New York, you're not allowed to touch the ball with your hands. Okay, that's a real big restriction. That's a really annoying rule. Why can't I touch the ball with my hands? It's the most natural for me to just grab the ball to save it, or to make a score, or to defend my goal. It's the most natural thing for me to use my hands, to block, to use my hands to score. What fun would there be in the game if I can't use my hands? But obviously that's a pretty stupid question, because it's only this restriction that allows for true fun. It's only this restriction that first of all creates a very interesting challenge, but more so if you watch the professionals play, you see how it's only without using their hands that they could develop the skills in their feet. So to be able to do all of the different maneuvers with their feet. So it's only because their hands are restricted that now it gives the opportunity for the feet to fully develop and fully use all of the skills that it has. And the same thing is with Torah. You could think Shabbat. Oh, look how many rules and restrictions there are. I shouldn't be going to work. I shouldn't be doing certain things that I do during the weekday. But the truth is that Shabbat allows us so many opportunities for us to express ourselves and for us to become, more connected with ourselves, more connected with our families, more connected with God, more connected with our purpose in the world, and everything that is most important in our lives. So while the whole week we're focusing on pressing issues, we're focusing on deadlines and getting things done, all of the technical parts of life, Shabbat forces us to celebrate what's truly important, to celebrate ourselves, our families, our purpose, of life, the purpose of creation. And so it's like the football game. When the hands are restricted, the feet could truly express itself and develop unbelievable skills. The same thing is with it, just using Shabbat as an example, but the same thing is true with the whole Torah. Certain mitzvahs and certain laws and certain rules allow us to get in touch with our truest selves. It allows us to express who we are in the essence. And that's the Jewish idea of freedom. The Jewish idea of freedom is a full expression, unrestricted expression of every part of ourselves, especially the deepest part of ourselves, who we really are in our essence, who we really are at the core, and the soul of us, the soul of life, really the DNA and the makeup of who we are, the core, the soul, and the essence of ourselves, true expression without any restrictions.